Welcome to Fintech Chatter News, presented by Tier 1 People, leaders in fintech executive search. Follow us on your favorite podcast player or Fintech Chatter TV on YouTube.
It has been a massive week for the Aussie Fintech industry. Intersekt 22 was bigger and better than ever. 2 days of conversations, insights, friendships being made, and connections being formed, along with all the reunions, laughs, hugs, and parties. Out of the hundreds of conversations I had, I managed to record a few to share with you. I speak to fintech legends, founders from the next wave of fintech startups, and also chat with some of the unsung heroes behind the scenes. Jennifer Harrison is one of those unsung heroes. As partner at Reputation Edge, she's been instrumental in supporting the Australian Fintech community through her PR and media work. Jennifer Harrison from Reputation Edge is with me. Jennifer, lovely to have you on the show.
Thank you very much for asking me, Dex.
So we first met, and I think Cybos 2018, very quickly followed by Intersekt 2018. Here we are 4 years later. What do you make of the last 2 days events, or that last 2 days?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. These last 2 days have felt not too dissimilar, actually, to Cybos, which is one of the biggest shows in banking and finance. Yep. Intersekt 2018, there were maybe 200 people. Yep. Whereas I think this event, there's almost 1,000 people. It's a big room and it's full of a lot of energy. I can see lots of people having really meaningful conversations. And I've enjoyed all of the panels and roundtables I've been to as well. So I really enjoy getting to the meat of the issues. I love it when people share authentically what some of their challenges are, not just say, all the positives and everything that's going great.
Well, I was hoping you could share with us a little bit about what you do as well in Reputation Edge, because I think I'd introduce you to my clients. And when I talk about you as the kind of being, if Dexter is to fintech, the executive search part, then Jennifer is to fintech, the PR part.
Oh, thank you very much. Take that as a very huge compliment. Yeah, so I do public relations. So I describe myself as a PR professional for fintech, and I also do prop tech and legal tech. So all of my clients are startups and scale-ups. They're all private. I don't work with any publicly quoted companies. One of my business partners at Reputation Edge does, but personally I don't. Yeah. And my background actually before I moved into PR was banking. I worked in corporate finance and advisory positions in Sydney and London for many, many years. And in the later stage of my banking career, I was actually, again, working with mostly private tech companies. And I discovered what I really liked was actually doing the communications side of that piece. And I decided that is what I would do full time, rather than doing so many spreadsheets and financial models. Yeah. So public relations is often confused with marketing. Yeah. And whilst they are similar, they are not quite the same thing. Yeah. So with PR, I am not necessarily just focused on your product and its features and benefits. I'm focused on getting your reputation out there, building your brand so people know your name. Yeah. And sometimes what I say is PR can pave the way for your business development later, because at least people know something about you. They've heard your name, they can put you into a particular section of the market. And to do that, we can actually do that before you've got a product in market. Yeah. Because we can talk about your people, particularly if you've got domain expertise. We can offer opinions and comments. We can talk about your partners, and we can also do a lot of thought leadership, talking about the problem that you solve for. And these things are all possible before you've actually got a product in market. Yeah.
So I was at the British Embassy earlier this week. There was a UK fintech delegation who's here at Intersekt, and we did a kind of panel session on the best approaches to launching here in Australia. And one of the guests who's been through that experience, their number one tip was first thing you should do is hire a really good PR agency or person. So kind of reflective of what you've talked about there is really kind of setting that kind of groundwork. Who are some of the kind of examples that you've kind of worked with and fintechs that you've worked with?
Yeah, so I've worked with a couple of UK-based fintechs. So I've worked with TrueLayer and I've also worked with Bankify. Both of those are successful fintechs in the UK and overseas markets, and they've identified the opportunity to build businesses in Australia. And they've both chosen to engage with PR and engage me quite early in the process. And I know some people have said, oh, look, you know, and maybe this is a budget consideration, but I know some people that, oh, look, we'd like to get our first customer. We'd like to get our first customer and get that case study, and then we'll come and do the PR. I was like, well, you know, I think you'll find it harder, particularly if you're B2B. Like if you're B2B, you've got much longer sales cycles. B2C, you can work social media really hard. You know, you can work social media, you can make a splash and get your name out there. In B2B, it doesn't quite work like that. So channels that I can help you access, like getting long form features in the Australian Financial Review or the Australian...
You're really good at that. Right?
Written by the really quality journalists that everyone wants. Everyone wants James Ayres at the Australian Financial Review, and everyone wants Joyce Malarkis at the Australian. There are other journalists, for example, like Yolanda Redrup was here, who does a lot of startup, but she doesn't do fintech in the way that James Ayres does fintech. For example, David Swan is the tech editor at the Australian, but again, he wouldn't do fintech, a fintech story the way Joyce Malarkis would do it.
One of the reasons why I always recommend you to my clients is that, you know, in my own business and kind of my experience, my competitive edge and my differentiator, I think, is understanding the nuance of fintech. You talked before about B2C and B2B, and we've got all these kind of derivatives, right? Like prop tech, legal tech, reg tech, crypto, right? There's all of these different things going on. So it's not like you can't have a homogenous solution. You have to have somebody who really understands those different things, which is, you know, one of the strengths, you know, and kind of reasons why I always refer you, because you just get it, right? What have you kind of found has been some of the success stories that you've had with some of the Aussie fintechs and kind of getting them exposure?
Well, like I said, like, you know, full length features by James Ayres in the Financial Review or Joyce Malarkis in the Australian. But, you know, once you've actually done that, you can't do that every month. Right? You can't be, for the right reasons, you can't be in the newspaper every week for the right reasons. So in Australia, then if you're interested in those big mastheads, you actually run out of them pretty quickly. You can try Sydney Morning Herald Age, but then we kind of look at, for example, and great example, you know, Simon Thompson from Startup Daily is here. He's a great fan of fintech, and he is very open to taking various forms of content that he will publish on the Startup Daily website. He'll push them out to the social media channels, and there's also the 2 p.m. Startup Daily show for live TV if people are up for that. There are a few digital media that you can access. There's Banking Day, for example, but each one of these has its own nuance. And I think one thing people often don't understand is media releases have their time and place, but a lot of times what I'm doing, there is no media release. I'm going with a one-on-one approach to a very carefully targeted journalist, and I'm not offering that story to any other journalists because they're like, well, why would I write a story that 5 other people in the market are going to write?
So you're controlling the narrative and really kind of getting that out to a broad audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And often what some of the stories I'm pitching, they don't have a particular deadline or time frame, which is helpful for the journalists, because journalists can't necessarily control what they have to cover on any given day. Sometimes actually what I'm pitching does have a particular deadline. We actually do have an announcement that is time sensitive, which is a little bit more challenging, and which is where, you know, if you are trying to do possibly your PR in-house, if you do have something that's time sensitive or deadline driven, that might be a time to reach out and try and get some external help.
What's been your biggest highlight of Intersekt?
I went to the Payment Strategy Roundtable yesterday, which was standing room only. That was a fascinating session, but it was Chatham House rules, so I probably can't really say too much more on that one. I really enjoyed the X15 presentations on Unloan yesterday and on Kit this morning. I think it's really fascinating seeing how CommBank and X15 are launching these fintech and incubating these fintech ventures. And I'm looking forward actually to the final session of today, which I think Revolut are on stage and Don Pim's on stage talking about challenger banks.
Awesome. And finally, if anybody's listening out there, we've got loads of founders listening to this and they're looking for PR support like what you've mentioned, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
I'm very active on LinkedIn. Generally, I'll accept most LinkedIn requests, or also on my LinkedIn profile, you will find my email and my telephone in my profile description.
Awesome. Well, Jen, it's been great to catch up with you again. And, let's make it 5 years next year, right?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dexter.
Thanks for listening, and make sure to check out our other interviews from Intersekt. If you're coming back, thanks so much for your support. It really does mean a lot to us. And if you're new to the show, hit follow and please leave us a review. It really helps us promote the Aussie Fintech ecosystem to a global audience. If you want to connect with me, reach out on LinkedIn and Twitter. And until the next one, keep safe. Fintech Chatter is presented by Tier 1 People, leaders in fintech executive search. We'll help you build a world-class fintech venture by connecting you to world-class talent. And you can find out more at tier1people.com.